to another episode of the Juan on Juan podcast. I'm your host, Juan, as always. And today we are joined by Chris, Matthew. What's up, bro? It's been about a year and a half since I last had you on the show.
Yeah, it's been a long time, man. Thank you so much for having me back on. I appreciate it. Good to be here.
Yeah, I'm a fan of your show. I listen to it regularly. And for the people that don't know about you, you want to share your social media or anything like that and tell us a little bit about you for those that don't know who you are.
Oh, yeah, sure. I'm host of Forbidden Knowledge News and Beyond Classified. You can find us on all podcast platforms, YouTube, on Rockfin. I don't think we're on BitChute anymore, but we're on all the other podcast platforms, Odyssey, stuff like that. I'm basically, man, just a normal guy who started doing a podcast because I was finding out some crazy stuff that I wanted to share with the world, and I started talking to people who were smarter than me to kind of get those that information out, and people started listening, so it turned into a thing, and I'm grateful for it. And now I have a whole network of podcasts that we do, that we feature on our website. So yeah, man, it's great to be here. I'm grateful to be where I'm at right now. All good stuff.
Yeah, we were just talking about how you do this for a living, and I'm envious because that's the big, that's what everybody strives for, right? To be Joe Rogan.
Yeah, it's pretty surreal, man. Like, one day I check our podcast revenue and it's like, oh my God, I'll be able to pay rent this month. And then the next month, I'll be able to eat this month too. And it just kept getting better. So it's like, it like I said, I'm very grateful to be in the position I'm at. Never thought I'd be there. Never thought that people would be listening to this. And I'm grateful most of all for the audience and the people that are listening. So thank you all.
Do you ever get a guest where you're like, man, this person's full of shit?
Yes, all the time. I will never let the audience know that. I'll never let the guests know that. You may be able to tell by my reactions. I hope not. But yeah, my show is to really to get all the voices and opinions and information and theories that I can, so the audience can decide for themselves. It's really not my job, but I like to bring as many voices as possible, because who am I to say if they're lying or not telling the truth or have bunk information or trying to throw us on the wrong path? I don't know for sure, and I don't think anybody can unless you're that person. So I give everybody a chance to come on the show with whatever information they want to bring, and I let the audience decide. And yes, there's plenty of times where I'm in the middle of conversation going, oh my gosh, what the hell are they talking about? This guy is full of shit. But yeah, I do not ever let the audience know that. And I think that everybody deserves a chance to share their truth, because who's to say it's not true besides them or the CIA that's been watching them.
Yeah. And that's the thing with how everything's so open for interpretation. And it's got to do with when it comes to stories that you listen to. Because I've heard there's been a couple of podcasts where it's random people who contact this guy or whoever it may be, about either paranormal experiences or whatever, or like a Bigfoot sighting or something like that. And you can tell it's bullshit. Like, it's like, is this guy being for real? And you go, and I always think to myself, I go, and I'm not talking about your show in particular, but I'm saying, like, doesn't this guy screen these people before he goes on? You know what I mean? Like, because I've had it in my position where I have a guest and I'll underestimate that guest. Mm-hmm. Right. But I haven't really had, except one individual who was pretty eccentric. I don't know if he was full of shit or what it was, but he was just off. Right. And I've only really had that experience one time, but I've had the experience where I underestimate people and how interesting they may be as a guest. Right. And I try not to do that anymore, because I've had people who I thought were going to be flops and they end up being like one of the best guests that I've had on, you know what I mean? And
right.
It's like they open up and they're super interesting. They don't, what's the whole thing? Don't judge a book by its cover, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it gets tough, man. I can't say that I have, I let everyone on my show that I do have a vetting process that I do, but for the most part, if I can find out a little information about you, if I can maybe hear some of the things you said before, or read a book, or find anything you have out there that may be interesting, sure, I'll have you on. If I think it deserves a ear or two to hear what the information is. And like I said, I don't really want to be the one to decide if you're interesting or not. So I try to give everyone a chance, and you're exactly right. There's plenty of times where I'm like worried that this person, the audience, is going to, leave terrible comments and not like this person. And why did I have them on? And they end up blowing it out of the water.
I read those comments on your video all the time. I don't know about this guy. And I'll be like,
oh yeah. Oh yeah. You got
people on YouTube have no shame, dude. They're like I had this other guy. I talk about the Gnostics a lot, right? And I talk about it was a clip on how the demiurge didn't want Adam and Eve to eat from the tree of knowledge, so they wouldn't understand that they're in a false reality. I'm just repeating a cosmology. I'm just repeating an idea of the Gnostics, right? And they're like, "Oh, this is false. You need to accept Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior." I'm like, okay, that's fine, but how Socrates said, I believe it was Socrates. It is the mark of an educated man to be able to discuss ideas without accepting them. And automatically, when you're in this realm of alternate thought, right, conspiracy or the secret, this occult knowledge, right, of whatever we're talking about, people believe already from the get-go. Since you're talking about it, you believe it, right? And I'm like you. I talk to different people of all types of people who are smarter than me in whatever subject I'll be talking about, because they know more, and I'll learn from them, right? But people automatically assume like, oh, well, you believe in the demiurge, well, you're a Satanist. Like, I'm like, no, dude, people are so closed-minded sometimes,
Yeah. And I'm not going to deny that there are people, especially during this time that we're in, that are intentionally put out on these talk shows and put out in this community to spread disinformation.
Chris, you wouldn't insinuate something like that, would you?
Of course I would, yeah, because I know for a fact I've probably had some of those individuals on my show. They make their rounds, and some of these individuals I know for a fact are very well known and they're very popular, and they do a lot of conferences and a lot of talks, and they're not the ones that you would think are crazy, are trying to get out there and spread some woo-woo stuff, but they actually are. So you have to be discerning in the information. I've come to learn that I trust my gut more than anything when it comes to the people I have on and just the people I associate with in general. I just go off the intuition I've had. I found I've always been able to have a good gauge on at least whether if a person has good intentions or not,
This is a good lead into what I want to talk to you about today. Last time we were on, I had you on and we talked about pretty much that, about these dark forces that are at work, the puppeteers that are controlling everything, this simulation, if you will, right? I subscribe to the idea of perhaps not a computer simulation or a holographic universe. Perhaps yes, because if you go back in time to the time of Pythagoras, Plato, Socrates, all these famous philosophers, whose work we regard today, especially, which is the most mind-blowing thing. That's something that was, in the year 300, we're still using it today. Why are we using it today if it was woo-woo, or if it, Galileo was silenced by the church because he knew that the earth revolved around the sun, and they excommunicated him, exiled him, and silenced him for something that was the truth. But at the time, it was against the narrative, which is what we see today. When you go against the grain, when you go against the narrative, people like me and you who talk about these things to bring awareness and almost expose, right? Because a lot of people are still in Plato's cave, where they are interpreting the shadows, the Neo in the Matrix, the red pill or the blue pill. When he finally gets out and he asks Morpheus, "Why do my eyes hurt?" And he goes, "Because you've never used them before." And to some people, that experience of you shattering their beliefs and what they thought to be real is a very painful and depressing experience. And that's why I think these people who the powers that are at work, they use these certain individuals to infiltrate and to maybe, mislead people as well. What are your thoughts on what's currently happening right now? I have been saying as of lately, I think we're going to be gearing up for did you know this month is Cybersecurity Awareness Month?
I think I might have scrolled past something like that. Yeah, that's interesting.
I think that the next narrative is going to be that. It's going to be the cyber vulnerability, and X world power is going to try and infiltrate our system. What was it earlier this year that they shut down that oil plant because they hacked their system? Do you think that's where we're headed towards? Almost like towards like a singularity AI type of thing?
Well, I'll tell you what, I would have never thought that we'd be in the position we're in globally. Last time we spoke, less than 2 years ago, this was not the same world that we're living in now. We're living in times where, like you said, misinformation is being spread, but people are also afraid to tell the truth. They're afraid to get to the bottom of things. They're afraid to go against the grain, because nowadays you could lose your job, lose your livelihood, lose your friends, lose everything, not be able to travel, not be able to fly, if you go against some of the narratives that are going on right now. So people are being pushed in a certain direction out of fear and out of being shunned and all the things that I said. And that's adding a whole new layer of complication and high strangeness and just dystopian nightmare reality that we're living in right now. So as far as a singularity, that's very possible too, because, I was talking to somebody about this yesterday, that it's possible that up to like 70% of the profiles you see online are fake. They're not real. Dude. So that means like we're interacting with AI, we're interacting with robots already. Set like, if it's that high of a percentage on Facebook. And to add to that, I think the whole overpopulation is a myth. I think that's another psyop. I think we could probably fit the whole world in Texas. Yeah, the cities may be overpopulated, but everywhere else there's no one. They're trying to get everyone herded into the cities right now. So we're living in extremely, I'd say, prophetic times where everything is coming together. A singularity may be possible because, more than half the people we're probably interacting with online aren't even real right now. So that's, that alone is something that should shift people's thinking whenever they realize stuff like that.
It's funny you say that, because this past weekend I went to this resort, and it's supposed to be like this cowboy-esque, almost, I don't want to say, almost like this Westworld type of thing, right? Out here in Florida, there's this place where it's called River Ranch, and you go out there and it's got a petting zoo. You can ride horses. It's a very, you can go camping. You can stay in like cabins and stuff like that. And I went out with the family out there this weekend.
Now, what area is this in? Because I used to live in Florida.
This is Central Florida, so St. Cloud area.
Oh, I used to live in Kissimmee. Yeah. Okay.
I live in St. Cloud, bro. So I'm right there.
Yeah.
And so when we were driving there, it was a rural area. And I told my wife, and I said, we complain that there's so many people, right, in certain areas, but there's still areas here in Florida where there is no one for miles and miles, right? And like you're saying, maybe this overpopulation might be a myth. Maybe, dare I say, that the global warming and all this shit that they talk about might be a myth. Why? To push a certain agenda. I think I saw recently where the army or they're one of the branches of the government is setting up an initiative for wars in the future over food. And what are we seeing today? We're seeing the supply chain being choked up, almost like, what does North Korea do? They make sure that 70 or 80% of their population is starving so that they don't have the willpower or the energy to fight and revolt against the system, right? They're too focused on surviving. Finding a snake there is like a delicacy. Finding a rat is a delicacy. And we're seeing this now, especially what's happening right now in the stores, dude. You go and there's nothing. It's scary, bro. It's really, really scary. you know?
No, you're right. And this is something that I've recently started to notice in my area is the shortages in the stores. And people don't like to talk about this stuff because this means that all the
And it's
things that
not
us
political. You know,
right,
I don't want to get political because it's not.
no, it's
It's
not.
I tell them both sides
It's
are this two faces of the same coin. It's all the
yeah,
same
you're
shit. You know what
exactly
I mean?
right. This is an agenda that surpasses politics. It even surpasses corporations. This is an agenda set forth by a few people at the top who want their ideal society and world. They're like man, they're like psychopaths with an ant farm. They like to shake it up and start over every once in a while. And
Dare
I
I
think
say
that's what you're
Rosicrucians?
I mean, I think they could be a mix of a lot of these elite societies. I think that's what happened. The top of all these societies around the world, at some point, intermingled and intermeshed, or at least collaborated together to get certain outcomes and desires globally. And that's of course what we're seeing now. You get to a certain level of power, and I hate to say it, but there's this boredom aspect to where you need to shake things up. And if you have that much power to where you can shake things up on a global level and watch the outcome unfold, man, that must be like, the biggest high for these psychopaths in the world, to see that they are changing the planet to suit their sick desires, in front of our faces. And it's in there, and it also seems like they're going off some kind of sick playbook of Revelations as well, adding in all these prophetic and programmed type of outcomes and agendas, like we've seen programming on television. Predictive programming is what you would call it, for years, about everything that we're seeing now, everything. And it's like science fiction has become reality. It's all unfolding before our eyes. And the ones that are in charge, they do not care how many people die, how many people suffer, or what kind of destruction they do to get whatever outcome is best for them.
Yes, and that's a lot to unpack, because you talk about science fiction becoming reality and becoming fact, and a lot of when I speak about ancient civilizations and let's be real, the biggest conspiracy of them all, religion. When I talk about these things, because it's just throughout all of history, and it goes back to these ancient mystery schools of Mesopotamia, ancient Egypt, all these places that they practice these different pagan and occult beliefs, right? When you tell somebody and you talk about this, a lot of people don't care, right? A lot of people are too blind to understand, and they don't want to. Oh, my wife says it all the time. What does history matter? And I go, well, it matters because history doesn't necessarily repeat, but it often rhymes, right? And a lot of the things that have happened in the past are happening today. But when you have a mass of people that are uneducated and fail to look at the origins of certain things that they use, right? A lot of people right now, what we're doing, we're using this technology that I don't know how it works, right? I don't know how it works, but it works and we use it. But the origins, if you go back to the origins of everything, you start to understand there's a darker agenda behind everything, right? There's more to it than just what is it, more than meets the eye type of shit. And a lot of people don't care, and they just go along with this. And in the Soviet Union, when these people take over and these dictators take over in power, Mao China, Stalin Italy, Hitler Germany, right? All the Nazi Germany. A lot of the things that progress those ideas and further that agenda is compliance, right? At the end of the day, it's peer pressure, which you see that today. A lot of people are being pressured into doing certain things against their own will, and to do what you said earlier, to be able to provide for your family, to be able to have a livelihood. Because if you don't, you suffer the consequences when you go against the system. And this has been like that since the beginning of time, dude. Ever since Christianization, right? When they took the Nordics over, right? They used neurolinguistic programming when they would. My favorite thing is when they would take a pagan god and turn it into a saint. You know what? To appease to the masses, right? And at the end of the day, it's just people complying. And I feel it takes, certain special individuals to be able to stand up for what they believe in. And I'm saying all this with an American flag in the background here, but at the end of the day, the whole reason that this country was founded was because they said fuck you to the crown, and they said that's it, we're not paying you any more taxes, and we're going to be our own thing, right? It was because of what? Because of freedom, not because of anything else, right? In 1776 it was like fuck you, we're going to do what we want, and that's that. It never came through compliance. And I don't know, dude, when there's two opposing parties in history, that's exactly what it is, his story. So to the victor the spoils, and that's what people don't understand, that the guys who won are the guys who write history.
Yeah.
And that's
You're
what we're
absolutely
living in.
right. And this country, you're right, it was founded off of great ideals and for a great reason, but then it was hijacked, after World War II, after the JFK assassination, after 9/11, slowly building to complete control of these sick Nazis, I don't want to curse, but these a-holes that took over our country. And the occult aspect that you're talking about, you're absolutely right. When people hear about elites, practicing occult rituals or Satanism or sacrificing babies, they check out because they don't want to believe it. It's too much for them. It's too sci-fi. It's too cute. Yeah, especially nowadays, it's become too QAnon for them. So they check out. They don't want to hear about it. But they need to realize that just because they don't believe in it, that doesn't mean that these dudes don't believe in it, because they do. They certainly do, and they practice it, and they are 100% involved in the occult aspects and these occult rituals, these ancient passed down knowledge from secret societies that give these individuals access to power and control through the only thing I can describe it as is magic. But it's just something that we don't understand because it's been suppressed, because they're the only ones that feel they have the right to understand magic and the powers of consciousness and all these things that are suppressed from the normal people, because they have this divine right to rule. And it's always been that way since these guys have been in power. So yeah, they hold all the cards and they are trying to hold all the knowledge, but right now it's falling apart for them. We're entering a period of awakening and revelation, and people are getting this knowledge back, and it's terrifying them. So they're pushing even harder. That's why I think they're moving so fast right now, is because the floodgates are bursting, people's consciousness are snapping open, and they're seeking this knowledge and they're finding it, and the elites are shitting in their pants and like, oh no, it's happening. We gotta herd these cats back in. But it's not working. I think they're going way too fast and making a lot of mistakes, and I think people are seeing through it. And one more thing I want to address that you said, a history about our history in general. We need to look into our history, because everything we've been told about it is fake. It's I mean, so much about it is the history books. You look at the stuff they've been teaching our children. You look back at the stuff they taught us when we were going in school. It's a bunch of fluffy nonsense that whenever you really start looking into the facts, you're like, holy shit, we were the bad guys a lot of times. Just everything, everything's a lie.
Yeah. And how I've recently been diving into Pythagoras and the Pythagorean thought and their processes. And I don't know where in translation it was lost, because he even preached against sacrifice, against the sacrifice of animals. He didn't eat beans because they resembled human fetuses, right? This is an eccentric guy who had a lot of ideas that inspired a lot of the greatest philosophers of our time that we know of, right? And I don't know where in translation it gets lost to do these things, right? But how you said, it gets to a point where there's this perversion of these ideals, and the idea eventually it gets lost in it's like this big phone, this big game of telephone, and eventually by when you get to the end, it's a completely different message than from the very first one, right? So for one of the examples is that I can give is the Knights Templar. Maybe at the very beginning they were the good guys, right? And eventually it got perverted. One bad apple spoils the rest, and the rest is literally history, where they got accused of worshiping Baphomet and doing all these crazy things. And we're talking about the people who are accredited to the modern day banking system, right? They say that they achieve this through what? Through alchemical means. And I don't know, dude. I think that perhaps, yes, I think that throughout all of history, if depending on which narrative you want to believe, because I'm familiar with Anatoly Fomenko's work on the was it science or fiction or some shit like that, where he talks about history being this, Scaligian chronology. He was a Jesuit monk, and they were responsible for a lot of the records that we have today, and they might have added 1,000 years to history. We might be 1,000 years too far in history, and the Dark Ages never existed, right? And all these different, but he is ridiculed, he is made fun of, discredited, and it's considered pseudo history, right? Pseudo science, whatever it may be. People like Graham Hancock, all these people who try to elevate people, they get ridiculed. Why? Because as a collective, people are against this narrative. And where do you think we go from here? And I want to talk about one more thing, language, right? Language from the very beginning, I feel, has been, you mentioned magic earlier. I feel it's been demystified. The original alphabet had 17 or 20 letters, and they added these characters that mean nothing, right? That they're essentially just made up, almost like you mentioned earlier, like being an NPC in this reality, where people are just placed here and to just fill in the void, right? If a tree falls in the woods, did it make a sound? Yes or no, right? If a conversation didn't happen on a podcast, did it actually happen? That type of thing where maybe some people are in this world are NPCs, and there are things used to fill in that void. But back to the topic, where do you think we go? Because I do feel that they've demystified language, and they've made it to where it's got less power. Right, because spelling, you're casting spells, right? The law of attraction, and these are things and rituals that they've used, divination and all these different things that they've used since the very beginning of time, and they've just taken the power away from man, right? And the divinity, the progress of you to be able to achieve divinity is a brokered experience now through what? Through the church.
Yes, you're absolutely right. They, with language, they've done the same thing with so many things to basically dumb down humanity and make us in a more infantile state. Look at the way, I really don't like talking bad about the younger generations, but I go out sometimes and I hear them speak, and I don't understand a lot of the things they're saying because it's a bunch of gibberish. They've they're in the major process of dumbing us down through language, through social media, through television. It's been, I think, accelerated since the dawning of television and this access to mass media, because it is an agenda. It's an agenda on top of everything else to, like I said earlier, herd in the cats, and we're all the cats, and they want us to be nice and domesticated and dumbed down and controllable. And that's the whole idea. And they've been advancing that idea through technology, through the shoddy technology that they show us, because we both know that the technology they have for themselves is probably 50, 100, maybe more years more advanced than whatever we've been given. But where we're headed right now is look at what they tell us every day in the media about science, about the new science. This isn't what I remember science being. This has become a religion. This has become blindly trust what we say because we say so, because we're wearing this lab coat. That's not the science that I remember. And if you question science, if you ask them, well, why is that so? Why can't we ask this? What is this about? Can we look at this compound? Can we do this under a microscope? No, you can't. You can't do science because our science won't let you do your science. Okay, so this is the ridiculous idiocracy that we have entered into already. Right now, this is the point we're at right now, where we can't question this new science religion that these morons at the top are trying to push down to us. And we all know the individuals I'm talking to. You see them on the news every day. You hear their names all the time. We don't need to glorify them anymore. But that's what they're doing. It's a huge process of not only dumbing us down, poisoning us, getting us to roll with one agenda, but they're failing. They're failing miserably because if you look around at reality, it's not what they're telling you on the news. I'll give you an example. I was talking to someone else about this the other day too. The reality I'm living in, there's no pandemic. The birds are chirping. I'm going outside. The sun's shining. The sky's blue. People are going to the store. There's maybe a few people with masks on their faces, but I just attribute them to NPCs, you know. And there's, you know, most of the day, it's a peaceful day, and I don't see people dropping dead from a pandemic on the street. And then there's this other reality that the news is showing you, and that I see online sometimes, and maybe on TV. But I don't ever see it in real life. No matter where I travel, no matter who I'm talking to, this other reality where there's a pandemic and people dropping dead on the streets and you have to get a jabby jab to do this and that, that doesn't exist in my reality. None of my friends are living in that reality. But, you know, I do know some people who are in that reality. I've spoken with them. I've interacted with them. That reality exists for them, but I don't see it. And I think there's a divide there amongst the planet. I think there are 2, maybe 3 or 4 different timelines that people are living on right now. And there's a split. And it's going to be very interesting to see what happens with this major split in timelines. And I think that could be attributed to also some of the high strangeness that we're seeing around the globe. This collective kind of insertion of, you know, UFOs, ETs, high strangeness into the collective consciousness in combination with COVID and a consciousness split amongst the entire planet, that could cause some interesting things. And I've always had the feeling that I'd be living in interesting times, you know, my whole life. And here we are.
Yeah, and sometimes you post some titles that I'm like, yikes. I'll be like, oof. I don't know if he's, you know what I mean? You have to be careful with these tech overlords because they'll pull the plug real quick.
Oh yeah, you know what? I've checked out on that. I'm not even worried about that. If they're gonna pull it, they're gonna pull it. If I'm supposed to be here, I'm supposed to be here. That's the way I figure it, you know.
And what are your thoughts? Because you've talked about this before on your show. What is it with all these earthquakes, all these floods, all these volcanoes erupting? What is the whole thing behind that, Chris? Because I'm not up to par with that. I've had a friend of mine kind of give me the lowdown on that. He says that all the floods is because they're flooding the tunnels underneath everywhere, and and you know what I mean, like all these intricate tunnel systems that they have, and it's got to do with the missing 401, that they all go missing on these concentrated places where there's cave systems. And
that's a deep one.
I don't know, dude. What is it? 800,000 people go missing a year?
Yeah, well, you know what? That could very well be true. You know, I am totally on board that there's a huge underground sex trafficking ring. I live in Denver. I'm totally believe that under the Denver airport there's a huge underground, you know, base that connects to other underground bases across the United States. That, yeah, I'm 100% sure that's going on. But as far as the earth changes, I have no idea. I used to believe that, you know, it was a combination of things, but it was being caused cosmically, like from a grand solar minimum or, you know, maybe a celestial body. I don't think it's, you know, Planet X or anything. I think it's possible that we could be entering an energetic place in the galaxy to where it's causing the core of our planet to expand, and that's probably most likely the easiest explanation. Or, you know, the grand solar minimum, the activity on the sun is causing the core of the planet to expand. It's causing a lot of earthquakes. It's causing the volcanoes to wake up, and all this. Also, the sun affects our weather, of course, so we're going to have crazy weather, crazy storms, a shift in our weather patterns, and on top of that, the magnetic North Pole is shifting towards Siberia at a crazy rate of like 5 miles per month or so. I don't know. It's really fast.
Really?
It's insane how, yeah. If you look at, I'm not sure. I don't want to give the wrong number, but magnetic North is definitely flipping towards Siberia very fast. And what happens is at a certain point, the magnetic pole is going to shift. That doesn't mean the whole planet's going to shift. That means our magnetic pole, the invisible shield that protects our planet from, you know,
Van
outside
Allen belt or
energies.
some shit like that.
No, this is closer to the planet. This is just a magnetic field, our magnetosphere, but it's the our magnetic poles may flip. We have a north pole and a south pole, and the north one is moving towards Siberia because of this cosmic energy that we're hitting, and it always shifts. We always have shifts in magnetic north. It happens every whatever 100,000 or 20,000 years. I don't know the exact. I don't think scientists know the exact amount of time, but it does happen. But now it started moving more rapidly in the past 20 years, and scientists don't know why. So it could be causing a lot of problems. And if it does flip all the way around, well, we'll be back in the Stone Age. All our electronics will be gone, internet, everything, and that would cause bad times. So yeah, I think our planet's going through some birthing pains right now. We're going through an interesting period. I don't know if it's going to like accelerate within our lifetime to where we'll see like massive floods crossing the earth or, volcanoes going off all over the place. I think it's going to be more of a gradual type thing where we'll keep gradually seeing strangeness and the weather patterns change and more earthquakes and stuff over the next 10, 20, maybe 30, 50 years. But honestly, I don't think we have anything to worry about immediately, unless the movement of our magnetic pole hastens up a bit and flips. Then yeah, we're in trouble. So that's my opinion on that.
Do you feel that this is what this individual means by we're gonna have a dark winter, perhaps?
Okay. You're talking about like the QAnon individuals?
Yeah, and I think Biden even said that we're get prepared for a dark winter.
So these guys on like Biden and the elected officials and the politicians, they love throwing in our faces what they're doing. They love saying, "Oh, welcome to the new world order." They love getting these Masonic numbers out there, 33.
You seen that, dude? The Freudian slips.
All the time. They love doing it because it's some kind of like revelation of the method type bullshit where they have to let us know what they're doing for some kind of karma reason so Baphomet doesn't rape them. I don't know why. They do this stuff. But yeah, they kind of let us know what they're doing. And what was the question before that? Where were we headed? I kind of got lost in the
that the dark winter.
Oh yeah, okay. So the dark winter. I think that a lot of the information that came out from the QAnon stuff was like a big psyop. I think a lot of it's true. A lot of it was mixed in to kind of throw up people like us off the trail and get a lot of normal people thinking that we were conspiracy theorists and part of this cult or whatever, the cult of QAnon. But it's possible, man. There's so many things that they talk about and they throw out there that never happen or happen 10 years down the road. That's why I don't hang on to any of this stuff that anybody says. Like, I don't wait for any of this stuff to happen. I don't worry about it. If it does happen, I'll explore the reasons why. I'll look at it like, oh shit, this really happened. But you can't kind of live your life expecting these things to happen or worry about it because, you get duped. You get duped over and over. I've been duped. The whole planet's been duped. And I think that it's really hard to discern information right now. And like I said, I go with my gut feeling on things. I think we're in extremely dangerous times right now. I think that anything is possible right now. Aliens could come down and start probing the planet right now. I don't know. There's a lot of things going on that I never expected to see in my lifetime happening right now. So we're living in interesting times, and I'm very I'm hopeful about the future. I'm also concerned about the future, but I like to project my my best intentions outward, so where hopefully they'll manifest good things in my life and for everyone.
Yeah, and that's the whole thing behind this. And I have people all the time because I call them the reptilian overlords, and they go, "Are they really lizards?" And I go,
"Could be.
They could be, right?" Yeah. Leading back to this royal bloodline of people, right? To the Anunnaki, all the way down to these kings of back then, this bloodline. And I don't know if they actually are reptilians or not. I like to think that maybe so, but these individuals, how you said that they what they do, they put out in plain sight. And it's got to do with, right, with the checkered, the black and the white. You have to, the yin and yang. And what Helena Blavatsky talked about too, where they embrace, because Carl Jung says, if you're able to conquer your dark self, that the subconscious is what shows you the nature of reality, once you're able to tap into that. And one of his quotes is, not until you bring the subconscious to the conscious will you call it fate and let it rule your life, or something along those lines. And these guys that talk about that, embracing this dark self, and Helena Blavatsky, that they talk about, be so evil that you achieve some sort of divinity, right? This thing where it's like it's like this really dark, bring forth evil to so much that you become divine almost. And it's, I don't know if you're familiar with the history of King James.
Somewhat, not, I didn't get deep into it.
So he wrote this book. It's called Daemonology, and it's a book of 3, right? You know what I'm talking about. Mm-hmm. And in that, the 3rd book talks about how it's almost like he's sympathizing with witches and sorcerers and all this stuff. And one of the things that he claims in the 3rd book is that the use of demons further glorifies God. So what do we see with a lot of these individuals in history? We can't forget the fact that a lot of the people who are attributed to the philosophical workings of all time, the arts and all these things, all these advancements in mathematics, physics, metaphysics, and all these different quantum physics, they were trying to, at the end of the day, they were trying to prove the existence of something, right? Like this being, the monad, right? This universal consciousness. And maybe perhaps through the use of these entities, right, they were able to channel this knowledge. Because if you really think about it, dude, if you go back to like ancient Mesopotamia, the Mesopotamians had knowledge of today that was proven today. Like one of the ones that blows my mind, and that's why I believe that there is some other world and some other reality. You talked about people living in their own reality. Even the Pythagoreans said, you are your own monad. You are your own identity, right? The identity of everything, how it sees itself. And maybe, for example, the Dogon tribe, where they had knowledge of the Sirius star system, something that, and then when you ask them, it's like, who told you? Well, the Nomos. Well, who the fuck are the Nomos? Well, the people in the saucer. Was it actually a physical being, or was it some sort of metaphysical being? You know what I mean? And I feel that a lot of these guys that did all that wrote history for us, and all the contributions that they made towards it, maybe perhaps they did it through the use of a Baphomet, right? Or through the use of an Abraxas, or through the use of something. You know what I mean? Like, we can't deny the fact that that's what they're doing. And they're bringing forth these manifestations, right? What is Geordie Rose from D-Wave? He doesn't work there anymore, but he said, we're opening up portals, and these things might come through, but they don't care about you, how we don't care about ants. Dude, that's fucking scary. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it is. That is the question, though. What are they dealing with, and what have we been dealing with throughout time? Is it that, ancients have taken psilocybin doses and got in touch with some entity through these experiences, or were they actually communicating with some sort of deity or interdimensional entity or alien or something like that? That is the question. Are communing, and I do believe that these occultists at higher levels have the ability to communicate or summon or invoke something, some otherworldly entity, something that isn't in our spectrum of the vision. And I think that what happened along the way is they got involved with some bad ones. They got involved with some bad juju who fed them a bunch of bullshit, who, told them, getting in touch with demons will get you closer to God. And, you have to be involved with demons if you want to be involved with the light. Well, I think that we've been had. I think we've been tricked by some of these entities along the way to gain power, in exchange. And I think this keeps going on till this day. They're still involved. They have some kind of pact with whatever cosmic consciousness or entity that controls that and that they got involved with, whether you want to call it Baphomet or Satan or Lucifer or any of these dark entities that are involved in occultism. I know you can go the other way. I know that there's invoking of Buddha and Jesus and Christ and for the light. But I think it's all depends on your intention with what you want to do with these occult practices. And I'm pretty sure that their intentions are not too good. And it's all about power. It's all about money. It's all about this incarnation and the physical pleasures and what you can get out of this life physically, and that's what it's all about for them. And they'll do anything to have the most pleasurable existence as possible at our expense, apparently.
Have you seen the movie Free Guy yet?
Yes, I saw that the other day
With Ryan Reynolds. And the symbolism behind that movie. It's the it's almost like a Matrix movie where through when he puts on the glasses, he's able to see it, but he wasn't able to break out of that matrix unless
Matrix. They live. It had it was a bunch of good ones, yeah.
And again, when I tell people symbols are the language to the soul, there's a reason why Plato wanted to eliminate certain arts and certain musical notes and certain things in the Republic, right? And have these philosopher kings and. Shit, he even talked about what is it, the eugenics. He believed that certain people should be able to mate with other people to have this master race, which I don't know who it was, but they said that the Nazis revered the Republic, right? They looked up to that book, and so did Martin Luther King Jr. So you have these polar opposites who interpreted the same material differently. Right. Mm-hmm. And we can get into the whole thing of Plato thinking that the thoughts were on a different dimension, on a different level. Right. Because when you have an idea, it just like pops into your head. You know what I mean? It's like, where did that even come from? Did I come up with that? Did something feed me that? And maybe it's like the Book of Enoch, where we are some failed experiment of El, and he's tried to restart it a couple of times over. That's why you have the great floods and all these different stories where there's like these great resets. And maybe they are getting pissed off right now, and we might see that reset. Do you think these elites keep saying something about the great reset? Do you think that's really going to come, or you think we're in the middle of that, or?
I think that it is an agenda. I think that it is on the menu for these individuals, whether it comes or not. I think maybe up to us. Now, I want to speak a little bit to these entities that are that we don't know what they are, interdimensional or whatever. When we spoke last, I don't think I'd had my contact experience at this time. Really? I had my first contact experience, I think, like a few months after I did the show with you.
It was back in March that we did it. Back in March of 2020 at the peak of COVID.
Yes. Okay. So this was a few months after the show. I had my first, what I can only say is a contact experience, and I have a much different understanding of it now than I did whenever it first happened. But I'll shorten it and give you a short, sweet little synopsis of what happened. I was practicing meditation at the time because I was getting out of a bad relationship with an ex-girlfriend. And I couldn't really go deep into meditation. I'd always have a block or be afraid to go, certain level or lose myself. And I wanted to get past that. So one day I did. I went really deep into meditation. I had some 432 hertz tones, and it was amazing. I'd never experienced such peacefulness. And during that experience, I somehow made contact with something other than myself. It started out as just this beautiful feeling of love and acceptance that I'd never felt before. And then this blue light kind of emanating in my subconsciousness that spoke to me. And it was like nothing else. It's not me talking to myself. It was definitely an outside voice. I thought I was possessed or going crazy for a second. And I'm like, I actually went back to like childhood Christianity. I was like, in the name of Jesus Christ, are you good? And like, before I could even finish that statement, he's like, yes. And just sending me these beautiful feelings of love and acceptance. And like, I've never felt love like this. I thought I loved my parents. I thought I loved my ex. No, this was amazing. This was like a drug I've never felt before. And he's just shooting these feelings, whatever this entity is. And he's telling me he's good. He's on my side. He's here to bring me messages and communicate with me. And he said it was time for us to meet. And I asked him what his name was. He's like, you'll never be able to pronounce it. Just call
What
me
the
something you're
fuck?
familiar with. And I was like, okay. So I just called him Laird. That was one of my cousins growing up. I thought his name was cool. So I just started calling him Laird. And Laird, Laird. Yeah. We had like a 2-hour conversation about the things that were unfolding on the planet, how we were going to enter crazy times, how I have a job to do in a small part of a collective that everybody's doing a job right now, and that I need to, look up this, research this, start realizing this, and quit my job because I was still doing a day job at the time. And I was like, what? Wait, he's like, yes, you need to quit your job. Do this full time, do this. And I'm like, oh my gosh, what is going on? And it was the most profound experience. And it lasted for a couple hours, and then the communication faded, but I needed to recreate it to understand what was going on, to even know that it was real. So I went into meditation a couple of days later. Again, boom, contacted with the entity. We go even deeper into conversation. I'm like, who are you? Where do you come from? I remember a few things that he said. He said, we spread Christ consciousness across the galaxy for those who are ready to receive it. And then I close my eyes, and it's like I'm seeing outer space, and it looks like I'm on a huge metal ship. And I'm looking around. There's no one around. I can see these huge windows on a ship. And then I start feeling this feeling of love, but it's like it's coming from different entities. It's not just this one. It's like a bunch of entities. I can feel them around me, but I can't see them. It's like, it's in my mind's eye. And all of a sudden they kind of start to appear. I can start to see entities, and they look like little human animal hybrids, but kind of etheric, like spiritual,
like gnomes,
ghost-like
like the Clockwork Elves.
Nah, but not really. No, they're like bird people, like one looked like Chewbacca. These are very strange entities that were wearing like little robes, and they were kind of translucent, kind of ghost-like.
Chris, did you take drugs?
Not this time. I will add something to that later. But no, I was not on drugs. This was just a meditation experience, and all these entities are beaming these feelings of immense love and asking me if I'm accepting my duty on this planet to do something I can't remember. I'm just like crying because this is an amazing experience. And the next day, it occurred again. I'm in touch with this entity. It was like a 3-day experience. And I finally was like, okay, there's something to this. I need to find out what the hell happened. So I reach out to all my contactee friends, to people who have experienced contact through meditation, all this stuff. And I have a much different understanding of what I was speaking with at the time. I believe that I was kind of talking to my future self. I believe it was my higher self and possibly spirit guides that I got in touch with. From what I understand, if someone is spiritually ready and seeking, they can get in touch with their spirit guides and find out a direction that they need to go and things they need to do in their life. And I think that's what occurred. After a few months after that, I did end up quitting a horrible day job that I was miserable doing. I mean, making great money, but I couldn't do it. So I just quit, and I, took out my life savings and said, you know what, fuck it. I'm just going to try it. I'm going to try. I was making $500 a month off this podcast at the time. So I was like, fuck it. We'll see what happens. Yeah. And the universe took care of the rest. Like within a few months, I was able to pay my rent and bills. And it's like everything just started happening after I took that first step that I was told to by, I think, myself and a few maybe spirit guides or ancestors or angels or whatever they were. I don't think they were aliens. I think they appeared to me as something I could digest and understand, and something that was comforting to me. So that's my understanding at this point of what's happened to me. It may change tomorrow. It may change 30 seconds from now. I don't know. But it was a profound experience, and I think it happened because I was seeking it. I was seeking to know myself, what I'm supposed to be doing here. Where am I going with this show? Why am I doing this show? I was seeking all these answers. I was trying to do meditation, and it responded. The universe, myself, whatever this was, responded to my questions and my desire to find out what is all going on with me and what should I be doing. So it answered me. And I think that that can happen for anyone that's truly seeking this. And it, like I said earlier, it depends on your intentions when you are seeking these type of answers and experiences.
Yeah, and that's a crazy experience. Have you ever done sensory deprivation?
No, I have not. Oh, and to finish that with the drugs, I have been able to recreate that experience with psilocybin mushrooms.
Really?
I've after those experiences, I've taken mushrooms and tried to meditate and contact same entities, and I have, and we had conversations, while I was on the mushrooms. So it's very interesting. It was like a fast track to that communication.
Have you done
dimethyltryptamine?
Have you done DMT?
Not yet. No, that's the one thing I have not.
Yeah, I've done psilocybin one time. It was probably one of the best and worst experiences ever in my life. And
it's like my therapist. Every once in a while, I have to see Mr. Psilocybin.
I was talking to my wife about it, where I told her, I said, she's like, oh, I'm like, I don't feel like doing it again because it shows you your inner demons, right? It really makes you dive into your subconscious and think about everything that's wrong with you. And that sounds like a horrible thing. Imagine, like, that relative that you call that just, when you talk to them on the phone, they just talk to you about how you don't call them enough. And it's like, that's the reason you don't call them. And every time it's the same thing. It's like, oh, you don't call me enough. Well, it's like, hey, my experience was.
It can definitely be that and more and terrifying, but it can also be beautiful and euphoric and comforting. And it just depends on your state of mind and where you really want to go with it. But yeah, if you're, it can bring up things, and it is like, it shows you what you need to work out and work on.
I think you should try sensory deprivation, bro. Like, it's getting in a tank, because I believe in the law of attraction. And when you're in there, for you, it was like this sort of liberating. I have a friend of mine who's an ex-evangelist, and he was led down that path, right? He says, when Jacob wrestled God, it changed him forever. And when you wrestle God, it'll change you forever. And I said, it changed you, didn't it? But it didn't change you to keep following his path. So wouldn't that be technically a bad thing? And he said, no, it changes you to whatever it is that you need to. It might be to whatever frequency you need to tune into, right? Not necessarily. Yes. I don't feel that we should give religion or that Godhead a name. I don't think it should be labeled. I think God is the universe, and through experiences like with yours, I think he's able to tap. We're all antennas, right? We all have an aura. We're antennas. We're highly susceptible to different things, and there's a reason that Nikola Tesla wanted to get energy from the atmosphere, right? Because it's there all the time. You just need to be able to tap into it. And as we wind down on this episode, I think it's a great note to end it on, that experience that you had, where if you seek, you will find, right? It's like you need to be able to find your own truth and your own light. And that's the path that I'm on too, where you're trying to understand the nature of reality. And I have a friend of mine was like, dude, you know so much about all this history and stuff. And I go, yeah, but I still can't tell you what the nature of reality is. I don't understand it. You know what I mean? And maybe one day I'll get to that level to where I can be like, hey, this is what it's all about. Maybe I'll never know.
Now, before we close, I wanted to just touch on what you said about God and what God is and what we are. Based on my understanding at this moment in time and my gut feeling, I like to put it like this, and I have to thank my friend Gloria Canning for kind of showing me this analogy. God is this emanating light of, it's everything, okay? But it's just all compacted into this one ball of emanating light. And then you take a colander with all these millions and billions of holes on it, and you put it on top of that ball of light, which is God. Okay, it's everything, encompassing everything. And out of the colander shoots billions and billions of individual little tiny beams of light. And that's us. It's God experiencing everything through those beams of light, through us, to grow and basically experience what the universe has to offer and keep growing and experiencing and expanding. And I think that's what this is. That's what it's all about. And I think right now, the collective consciousness is trying to push us back towards the light and maybe create some turmoil and things that will get us to look in that direction and go back towards that light. And that's just my opinion on maybe a cosmic scale of things, you know?
Yeah, and to add to that, Pythagoras, he said that all these sidereal bodies, so all the stars, all the galaxies, and all that stuff, all these celestial bodies, they are their own consciousness. So it adds to that idea that, like you said, what do they say? We're light beings having a human experience.
Yes.
You know, where we're here as this trial, right? And we have to be able to break out of the reincarnation, or else be sent right back to where it all started, or maybe be reincarnated as as a rabbit or something.
Yeah, a rock.
So, dude, I had a ton of fun with this conversation.
Oh yeah, man.
Super interesting. Thank you for coming on. And one more time for the people, so they can find your information, and I'll post it in the link as well in the show notes. But
sweet.
Where can people reach you or check out your work? I know, again, I'm a fan of the podcast. You can find it on YouTube, but anything else you want to plug?
Yeah, you can find all our stuff on our website. That's forbiddenknowledge.news. You can find all the podcasts we host there, Beyond Classified, Forbidden Knowledge News. That's the easiest way to get all our stuff. We're also on all podcast platforms. We're on Odyssey. We're limited on YouTube because we have to cut out a lot of stuff that we can't talk about nowadays, but we're still there a little bit. But if you want all of our premium content, all the stuff you can't find anywhere else, all the juicy stuff you can't even hear on the podcast, go to Rockfin. That's ROKFIN.com and get yourself a premium account there. You're going to find some awesome stuff, but it's not just us there. It's like a ton of content creators that you know and love, a bunch of familiar faces. So go to Rockfin, check that out. And I think that's about it. If you want to email me, it's forbiddenknowledgenews@gmail.com.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Chris. I had a lot of fun, man.